lovelies, and welcome to today's video. I hope you're fine and having a very good day. In today's video, we'll learn how to draft our basic skirt pattern. This pattern can be modified to create any kind of skirt you want. So that's why it's the basic skirt block. So let's go straight to the video. Now, to draft this pattern, I'll just mark a straight line at the middle of my pattern paper, which will serve as my side front and side back. So I'll just use that line to separate the front and the back side of my pattern. I've marked that line from bottom to the top of my pattern paper. And I also go ahead to mark a horizontal line at the top as well, which will now act as my waistline for this pattern. These are the measurements I will need for today's pattern drafting. Now, going by these measurements, the full length of my skirt is 23 inches. So I'll apply that at the middle of this pattern, which is the line I marked for my center front and center back midpoint. Now, once you've applied that 23 inches, you need to go ahead and apply your waist to hip measurement. This is different for everyone, so I'll encourage you to measure yours and use your waist to hip length to mark this. So I'm using 9 inches for mine, and I've marked that at that point. Now, once I've marked these 3 points, the next thing I need to do is to measure my hip circumference, and I'm working with a hip circumference of 44 inches. So to apply the hip circumference to this pattern, we need to divide that into 2, and that will be 22 inches. Now, on our 22 inches, we'll apply 11 to the right and 11 to the left, which implies that 11 inch will be the quarter of our hip circumference. So we're applying that to the front, and we're also applying 11 inches to the right pattern. So let me just explain that this side will act as our back pattern, and this side will act as our front pattern. Now, we've created our front and back patterns, and we've marked our hip line. So what we need to do now is to connect this hip line. Now, once you've done this, you now have your center front and center back, because the highest point of your hip will act as the width of our pattern. So now we need to connect this point to the point where we marked our full length. Okay, so before we do that, we need to connect also with a horizontal line to create our full length. Then we'll go ahead and connect the 3 points with a straight line. So this line is our center back, and this is our center front. Now, what we need to do next is to impute our hip measurements. So our hip circumference is 36 inches. We need to divide that into 4. So 36 divided by 4 is 9 inches. Now we measure from the center front towards the midpoint, 9 inches. Then we're going to add 1 inch to that to create our dart. The standard measurement for that is 1 inch, but you can modify this to suit what you want. Now we've imputed 1 inch there, and that's 10 inches. Then on our hip line as well, we'll go up by 1 inch. This will help us blend our hip curve from the waistline into the hip gradually, so it doesn't look too sharp. If you connect from the waistline straight into the hip line, it will look very sharp and will not blend gently. So this 1 inch will help us to achieve that. Now we need to blend from the waistline into the hip line. We'll do same to our back. So measure the hips waist circumference, divide by 4, which is 9 inches, plus 1 inch for that. Then we connect that as well into the hip line. Then we're going to come up by 1 inch on our waistline. This is standard and it creates a kind of curve as well. It blends this side into the front and the back pattern gently, so that your body fits in perfectly. As you know, our body is not straight, it curves gradually on every side. So that is the function of this 1/2 inch. So I'm just blending that into our front and back waistline. If you want a little more balance on the front line, especially if you don't have a very flat tummy, you can decide to also go down by 1/4 or 1/2 inch on the front line. So to blend the front a bit further downwards, it will give a very perfect fit. This is optional, but it comes out beautiful when you do that actually. So now we've created our waistline for the front and the back patterns. What we need to do now is to create our dart. And to create our dart, we need our bust span measurement. The bust span is the distance between your 2 nipples. I've explained that in my basic bodice pattern. So we'll use same measurement for our skirt pattern. So my bust span is 9 inches and I'm going to divide that by 2, which will be 4.5 inches. So impute that on this pattern, 4.5 inches. And that's what we'll use to create our dart. So to create the dart, you just go to the right by 1/2 inch and to the left by 1/2 inch. So you do same on your back pattern. So we're going to measure 4.5, then we'll measure 1/2 inch to the right and 1/2 inch to the left to create our dart. Then on the hip line for our front pattern, we'll impute the bust span as well. Then we'll go up by 2.5 inches to create our front dart. Then for the back pattern, after measuring your bust span, what you need to do is to go up by 1.5 inches. So it's 2.5 in the front and 1.5 at the back. It works on the average for almost everyone, but you can decide to make it longer or shorter. Like I said, it's just the average and works perfectly. So connect those 3 points with a straight line running from your waistline to the 2.5 inches you measured from hip line. Then at the back as well, you connect with a straight line. Then you link those 3 points up from the waistline to the 1.5 you measured on the hip line. Now once you've done this, you've created your skirt pattern. This is the basic skirt block and it can be modified to make different kinds of skirts, like if you're making your flare, your paneled skirts and all that. So now let me explain something quickly. If you're making a pencil skirt with this, you know, from your hip curve down to the bottom of your skirt, there's usually a curve or a slant, a little slant in. Now to create that, you can decide to go in by 1/2 inch to the right or 1/2 inch and 1/2 inch to the left. This is the minimum you can take. To be honest, I would rather you go in by 1 inch to the right and 1 inch to the left on the minimum, you know, to create that curve. But this also depends on how wide your hips are. If you're very curved, like if your hip is a bit on the big side, you know what I mean, you could consider going in on this bottom by 1.5 inches or 2 inches even. Depends on what you want to achieve and how you're able to move your legs and be comfortable in it. Okay, so if you're going in by 1.5 inches, then what you need to do is to connect with a straight line from the hip line down to the bottom. Okay, so if you do that, then you would have created your curve for your pencil skirt. That's from hip line to the bottom. Then on this side as well, you will create that. So that will be your basic skirt block. Now, if you're making your skirt at the back pattern, you can consider to add your zipper allowance and your seam allowance when you cut in on fabric. This is just the block. Then you're going to also add your hemming allowance before you cut in fabric. So this is very simple and straight to the point, and I hope this video was interesting and you found it useful. Please like and share this video with your friends and ensure to subscribe to my channel. I also appreciate if you turn on your notification bell so that you get notified each time I make a new video. I'll see you again in my next one, and in my next video we'll modify this pattern to create some panel skirts, maybe 6 panel skirts and all that. Okay, if there's any skirts or any pattern you would like me to teach next, kindly drop me a comment and I'll be very happy to respond to that comment and to make the video as quickly as I can. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for watching this video. Do have a lovely day. Bye.